Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 53. So, what are today's topics?
Russo-Ukraine war update, the consequences of Roe versus Wade being overturned, GOP blowing 2022 wins, AOC calls for SCOTUS impeachment, Boris Johnson resigning, Americans don't want Trump or Biden, Jordan Peterson is retarded, and the assassination of Shinzo Abe.
And of course, it's been a month since we last got to this, so it's time to do an update on the Russo-Ukraine war, as I have both the map from 4 weeks ago and the other one just recently loaded up. I have them side by side, and unfortunately, Russia took over more of the Luhansk and Donetsk area, unfortunately, but other than that...
Yep, and I think I've heard they're now in control of like most, if not all, of Luhansk now.
But other than that, the lines have largely been the same, looks like. Some areas Ukraine's pushed back. And of course, they took back Snake Island, if you didn't hear.
Yep, I heard that. Well done to them on that.
Well, from what I found out, actually, it's pretty much like uncontrolled at the moment because they're too afraid to try and take it back because they're afraid Russia's going to do the same thing to them that they did to them to kick them out. So it's like uncontested at the moment. But yeah, this is unfortunate. And of course, here was another thing that happened since the last time we didn't talk about that. Have you heard about what happened with Lithuania?
Yes.
So for all of you who don't know, back in late June, Lithuania finally applied the EU sanctions that did not allow certain goods to be transported by rail from Lithuania into Kaliningrad. Because for all of you who don't know, there is a little strip of land just south of Lithuania, north of Poland, that's also part of Russia. It's separated from the mainland by like 300 miles or so. So the only way they can transport stuff in there besides plane or ship is by going through one of two countries. So Lithuania banned some goods, not all, just some goods from the EU has on sanctions on them from getting in. And Russia has gone ape shit over it and pretty much threatening war over it. Now, of course, for all of you who don't know, Lithuania is part of NATO, so if they did one thing to Lithuania, we're all at war with Russia then. So, you gotta wonder, are they really that suicidal to push that? I mean, they're really having this much trouble with Ukraine. Do they really think they're gonna have any chance to beat all of NATO outside of killing us all with nuclear weapons? Like, they have to realize that. It's suicidal. So you got it's like all bluff or something like that. And unfortunately, NATO, or not NATO, the EU might be taken a little bit more seriously than it probably should. And they're doing like some sort of negotiations on how they can resolve this. Which, don't think that's going to be needed. If anything, it might make it worse for you. Because it's not Russia's been saying it's a blockade. Which a blockade is an act of war, but it's not a blockade. It's not allowing some military goods transport. Other things can transport by rail just fine. And also, it costs more, but they could fly and ship goods in too. From the Baltic Sea and all that. So, there's other things they could do. So, definitely concerned in that regard. So, we gotta see about that too.
Yeah, I mean, bring it on. Nah, not really. But...
Well, I'm sure Russia knows, outside of nuclear weapons, conventional war against NATO, they will lose. I would hope they know that.
Just got too many people across the EU.
And of course...
And you've got the US and Canada too, so... Or should I say Canada?
And also, there are countries that are also in the EU that are not part of NATO either. And EU also has a defensive pact, so if you attack... Lithuania, not only it's NATO, also EU countries that are not part of NATO too. So, yeah, that would be a really stupid idea.
Those would be Austria, Cyprus, Ireland, and Malta.
And Harry said Cyprus and Russia have been allies since the 70s because of Turkey's invasion of them, remember? The sweet irony of that would be if that would be the case. You wonder how much he would be mauling over that.
You know that he would defect to Russia first chance he got.
So, seriously, Side, what do you guys say about the territory change if you see the two maps in this last one?
Not really much. I mean, It's disappointing that Luhansk has basically fallen now because all the Ukrainians in there are going to be killed, or sent to the camps have apparently gotten killed. But keep fighting, because it's not just you guys in Ukraine that you're defending. You're also defending Moldova and Georgia. And remember, Moldova doesn't have a standing army.
And they're not part of NATO either.
Yeah. Yep.
And also, you gotta keep fighting to make it as bloody as possible for Russia, to make it as painful for every inch of land they take.
Yep. Demoralize them as much as you possibly can.
Do it like I do Vicky 2 style. Make every inch of land they take as painful as possible. Alright, so now with that out of the way, maybe we'll probably come back to it another month or so. Just keep on fighting Ukraine. So now, on to the next topic, which you want to be?
Consequences of Roe versus Wade being overturned.
Okay, so because of Roe v. Wade being overturned, states can now decide what laws they want on abortion to be as strict as possible, because under Roe v. Wade, all states were not allowed to ban abortion up to age of viability, which was like 24 weeks or so, and after that, they could ban it if they so want to. And most states in the country did have that, as we showed on the map like a few weeks ago, where most of them had their ban set like 24 weeks or so, or like that. But because of Roe v. Wade being overturned, they are allowed to set any limits whatsoever. And of course, as I warned, and you warned too, a whole bunch of states not only are going so strict, they're going strict to the point where rape, incest, fatal life of the mother, fatal fetal defect. Yeah. So they're banning abortions for any reason. And this actually...
Not only that, remember that there's 2 states with 2 more planning that are murdering women who have had abortions, and abortion providing doctors is now decriminalized. And it's not legal yet, but they have decriminalized it.
And also, a lot of states are trying to prevent women from going across states.
Yes, going across state lines.
Which I would really like.
That's part of the decriminalization of murdering women who have had abortions.
Which I also would like to know.
One out of state to have one. It is now, they will now no longer prosecute you if you murder them.
Also, I would really like to know how they would even be able to enforce that. How are you going to stop women from doing that? Are we going to literally stop every single car or whatever traveling across state to see if anyone is getting one or not? That seems out of possibility, unless you want to stretch your money and resources that thin and waste money for stupid crap. Which, hey, conservatives always do. Yep, conservatives always do stupid shit. But this is just absolutely disgusting, as we're about to cover. Kyle did a video on a 10-year-old that was raped, got pregnant, unfortunately, somehow, and was denied abortion in Ohio because of Roe v. Wade being overturned. Absolutely disgusting and barbaric.
All right, so here we go, guys. With Roe versus Wade being overturned, we are now seeing the logical consequences of that. This is in The Guardian. 10-year-old rape victim forced to travel from Ohio to Indiana for abortion.
This wouldn't be happening if Roe v. Wade was still there. If Roe v. Wade was there, something as heinous as this would be allowed.
10-year-old rape
victim.
I want you to think about that for you, idiot pro-lifers. You're really going to deny abortion to a 10-year-old who got raped? Just so you know.
Yep.
Just so you know. Well, first off, women are not really supposed to get pregnant that young. It's supposed to be more like after puberty, it's supposed to be like 12, 13, and onward. So for 10-year-old, that's really bad. And just so you know, even when women are able to get pregnant that young, 12 and 13 such, their bodies are not developed enough to handle it. So if anything, the younger they are, they're more likely to die from having childbirth. Yep. So not only are you allowing a rapist to get away with this, you're making it more likely a woman would die because of this. And that's why...
Remember, they're all misogynists. They hate women, and they want to... And they get off to women dying and being murdered.
And that's why we keep telling you all, this is not about the life of the fetus and all that crap. It's just about control. Conservatives don't want women to be able to do what they want with their own bodies, because that's required for freedom, to be able to control their own bodies, and that's why they want to prevent that, even at the cost of allowing women to die. And that's why these people are an absolute scum.
10-year-old rape victim.
Exactly.
The case of a 10-year-old child rape victim in Ohio who was 6 weeks pregnant, ineligible for an abortion in her own state, and forced to travel to Indiana for the procedure has spotlight.
Yeah, Ohio, last we covered too, when we did a video on this,
Yep.
was on the list that abortion was banned after 6 weeks, no matter what.
The shocking impact of the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on abortion. The story of the girl came to light 3 days after the court overturned a nationwide right to terminate pregnancy, and Ohio's 6-week trigger ban came into effect. Dr. Caitlin Bernard, an Indianapolis obstetrician gynecologist, said she had received a call from a colleague doctor in Ohio who treats child abuse victims and asked for help. Indiana's lawmakers have not yet banned or restricted abortion, but they are likely to do so when a special session of the state assembly convenes later this month. Abortion providers like Bernard say they are receiving a sharp increase in the number of patients coming to their clinics for abortion from the neighboring states where such procedures are now restricted or banned. Quote, "It's hard to imagine that in just a few short weeks we will have no ability to provide that care," Bernard told the Columbus Dispatch. But the case of the 10-year-old girl has placed prominent anti-abortion political figures in the position of balancing the rights of women and girls, including abuse victims, while defending abortion restrictions. Republican
They
Governor
don't or like the rights of women. They're actively opposed to women having any rights.
Exactly.
Of South Dakota, mentioned as a potential running mate to Donald Trump in 2024, told CNN State of the Union on Sunday that she found it to be incredible that nobody's talking about the pervert, horrible, and deranged individual that raped a 10-year-old. Yeah, we're all against the rape. We're all against the rape, Kristi Noem. The question is, what do you do now that it happened? Do you allow the abortion or do you not? 95% of the country has a very clear answer to that. You happen to be in the 5% that has the opposite answer. Abortions are now criminal acts in South Dakota unless there is appropriate and reasonable medical judgment that performance of an abortion is necessary to preserve the life of the pregnant female. See, this is why this is crazy. Because if you're a 10-year-old and you're pregnant, that is life-threatening by its very nature.
Yes.
So
exactly.
You should be able to get that abortion, no matter what. But the providers are being extra cautious, and they're like, look, we can't allow this. It's insane. Cases of incest and rape are not an exception under South Dakota's law as it stands. This is what a lot of these people believe, and you need to understand that. The position that the far right
literally believe that the life of the fetus is more important than the life of the mother, and they believe that if you're a victim of rape or incest, you should be forced to birth that child.
And you had it coming too, because you were probably drunk or dressed too slutty and all that, remember? Fucking dumbasses.
Yep.
Approval rating of about 13% in the country, which is like ban all abortions, except maybe if it with the life of the mother in danger.
Nope, not even that.
Support. And now this is basically implemented in a number of states across the country. On Friday, the state also banned medical abortion by telemedicine and increased the penalty of the unlicensed practice of medicine when performing abortions. Jesus Christ. Dana Bash, CNN State of the Union host, pressed Noem on whether it was right for a 10-year-old rape victim who was pregnant to have to cross state lines for a legal abortion. Seeming to try to deflect, Noem said the rape of children is an issue that the Supreme Court has weighed as well, adding that the public also should also be addressing those individuals who do this to our children.
Legalize child rape if they have the opportunity to.
And also, you dumb cunt, it's a simple question. It's yes or no. Should a 10-year-old rape victim be allowed to get an abortion or not? Yes or no? The answer is obviously yes, but you know you don't want to answer because you think you're going to lose your job, and you can't say no because it'll make you look really bad. That's why you try to deflect it. Fucking disgusting.
Asked if she would seek to have the law changed if a similar case occurred in her state, Noem replied, "I don't believe a tragic situation should be perpetuated by another tragedy."
Oh my God!
Fuck off! She's deflecting because she supports
for a 10-year-old
raping.
There's more.
She supports raping little girls.
Absolutely fucking retarded.
We have got to do to make sure that we really are living a life that says every life is precious, especially innocent lives that have been shattered.
Ah, yes, guys. It's a tragedy.
Ah, yes.
It's a
the life
tragedy.
of a fetus is more important than the life of a 10-year-old rape victim.
It's a tragedy for an abortion to happen to a 10-year-old that was raped. Oh, that's so a tragedy. Oh, shut the fuck up, you disgusting bitch.
Like that 10-year-old girl.
Yep.
Asked if the girl should have to have the baby.
Fucking cunt.
Responded that every single life is precious.
Careful, she'll probably say you're a misogynist for that one.
Don't care. Don't
This
care.
tragedy is horrific, but in South Dakota, the law today is that abortions are illegal except to save the life of the mother.
She supports. She opposes abortion. She prefers the rights of the fetus over the life of the mother, and that means that she also supports rapists. So.
Yep.
I think comments like that
if
are
allowing an
not
abortion to be performed by a
massively
10-year-old would be considered as
Not
protecting the
that
life of
bad.
the mother. Noam did not rule out that interpretation. Quote, "Oh, thank you. Very merciful of her now." Yes, that situation, the doctor of the family, the individuals closest to that, will make the decisions there for that family, she said, returning the issue that, for many Republicans, is the central focus of the abortion debate. Wow. So it was like pulling teeth to get her to say, yes, a 10-year-old who just got raped and is 6 weeks pregnant should be able to get an abortion.
Why
By the way,
did
I think
we had to pull your
other
teeth?
articles,
Like,
they
come
said
on, that should have been an obvious
the 10-year-old was
yes.
like-
Come on.
maybe it was just a
Because
touch
she's
over 6
evil.
weeks
Yes.
in terms
That's
of how long
why.
they're pregnant. So they were like, oh, we can't allow it because we have the 6-week ban. I mean,
Remember,
that
guys,
is-
none of this would
Look,
be
this is
happening
what
if
happens.
Roe v. Wade
This
wasn't
is the result of
overturned.
overturning Roe versus Wade.
Yep,
A point I haven't
exactly.
seen many people make.
And also, Roe v. Wade was the moderate policy. So get wrecked, pro-life retards.
In the context of this conversation, is that Roe
Pro-birth
versus Wade is a moderate
misogynists.
policy. It truly is. So the way it works is that first trimester, getting an abortion is a right. So early on in the pregnancy, getting an abortion is a right. In that second trimester, states, if they so choose, can do some basic health regulations around abortion. And in
Which most do. Most ban it after the age of viability, like 24 weeks or so, unless it's like fatal fetal
exactly.
defect or life in the mother or something like that.
the third trimester, if
Rape,
they so choose,
incest,
they can
fatal
ban
defect in the fetus, and life of the mother.
That's Roe versus Wade. So in other words, all around the country, there may have been variations from one state to another state as to when it's allowed and when it's regulated and when it's banned, etc. But there was a reasonable framework that everybody had to abide by. And then you scrap that, and now a lot of the states go far right and go super extremist. And here we are.
Yep.
Now we're suffering the consequences of that. So how many rape victims are going to be forced to carry their baby to term?
How many who have gone out of state to have an abortion because they're victims of rape will come back and be murdered,
And not only
or
that,
refuse to go back because it's legal, because it's now decriminalized to murder them.
and not only that, this 10-year-old is lucky that they're able to go to a state that they're able to get this. But guess what?
Yeah.
There are a lot of states in the country, and a lot of women and like that are poor that just can't go to another state to get an abortion because it's just too expensive and takes too long. Like Texas. Like, Texas is probably so big that it would probably take an entire day to cross one side of it if you're on the other side. Like, Texas is huge.
Yeah.
And then of course, Texas is mostly surrounded by other states that ban it. Only place you could probably get it is if you went down to Mexico. But of course, going from America to Mexico just for that is going to probably be even more expensive because you can't just go across the border to do that like you could a state. So, yeah, this woman, this girl is lucky, but other women that are in poor situations probably will not be. And they're going to die because of this.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot. And then what happens when these kids are born and people don't have the means to take care of them?
Oh yeah, and that's another thing too. Pro-life, but once the kid is born, individual responsibility. Pull your stuff by your bootstraps.
Exactly.
You don't, no social policies, no social spending, no welfare, nothing. You are on your own. So if your mother could die giving birth to you, and then you could die hungry because we won't provide the policies that help you.
Them and
Because it also shows that pro-lifers are not actually pro-life. They're pro-birth and pro-death.
They're pro-birth and their fetus files.
we have a dog-eat-dog laissez-faire
Oh, and
system
if
in
they're
many
Catholic,
respects, and it's like, well,
once they get to it, they want as many of them there, so that once they hit about 6 or 7, they can start raping them.
increase benefits? Do you want to increase the social safety net to help these kids? And for a lot of these people, the answer is no. I supported you when you were a fetus, but now that you're a child, you can piss off. I mean, it's just...
And come back when you're 6 or 7 so that I can start sexually abusing
the
you.
logical result of Roe versus Wade being overturned. And really, we got to get to the core of the discussion to really defeat the far right on this, which is they say, no, the second you're done having sex, there's a third person in the room.
Which is absolutely ridiculous and should be laughed at.
45-year-old person.
Yeah.
And the response to that is, that's absurd, and you know that's absurd.
And that's why, like Kyle said, only 19% of Americans want abortion banned entirely. And some polls cover it's down to 13%. So these guys are the extreme minority. We need to have that metaphorically beaten to their heads. You're a minority, so you don't get your way in a supposed representative democracy. So shut up and deal with it.
It's absurd.
Exactly.
You know, when we're talking about gametes and zygotes and pregestation fetuses and fetuses that don't even have the nervous system created yet, so there's not even any pain, that is categorically different than an adult or a baby. It's just not the same thing. So now, should we have a philosophical conversation and an intellectual conversation about, hey, where do you think it's reasonable to draw the line? Yeah, and there is disagreement that's fair in that realm. But the extremist position of the far right is the least popular position, and that's what's winning out in many of these states now, because Roe versus Wade was overturned. And that's unacceptable. The 13% position is being implemented in over a dozen states? No. And this is what happens. By the way, I got one more for you here. Mississippi House Speaker says 12-year-old incest victims should continue pregnancies to term.
12-year-old incest victims, which most likely would probably be rape too.
Yep.
Absolutely disgusting.
So Mississippi House Speaker, these are people...
And 12 years old, even though it's closer and probably more safe than 10-year-olds, is still way too young.
Not really. Like, honestly, I think it's about...
I was about to say it's still more...
You're still like 16 at minimum before it'd be safe, relatively speaking.
Yeah, you'd still die probably when you're 12.
People with power, guys. These are people with power. We rolled the clock back. This is draconian. This is primitive. This is regressive. And Pandora's box has been opened. It ain't pretty. So buckle up. There's going to be a lot more stories like this coming through. Hey, y'all, do me
and all
a lot of murders.
And this is why Roe v. Wade is needed. And I don't want to hear no excuses about it. This is just disgusting. I don't want to hear no excuses. A 10-year-old rape victim should be able to get an abortion. End discussion. Don't want to hear any excuses about it. And if you do defend this, then you're a piece of shit. Hope you get wrecked hearing that. Alright, so now, here's another thing that's also related to Roe v. Wade being overturned. The GOP is blowing their huge wins opportunity in 2022 midterms coming up. So, for all of you who don't know, of course, in America, once every 4 years in between the presidential elections, we have midterms, which is coming up this November. Now, normally, like the last 15 years or so, the party that's in power loses really badly in the midterms. When Bush was in power in 2006, the Democrats won the House and Senate. And then Obama in 2010, 2014, the Republicans won back everything. And then in 2018, when Trump was in, the Democrats gained back the House. Now, throughout most of the last year or so, all the polls show that the Republicans were going to take back the House and Senate possibly, because Biden's a piece of shit. He isn't doing anything because the Democrats are weak.
He's a brain-dead moron.
Yeah, weak as fuck, not doing anything. And of course, like I said, the trends continue. Democrats in power, so Republicans are going to win. But, mostly because now of Roe v. Wade, there's actually been a massive flip on that. To the point, have you ever heard of Let's Talk Elections?
Yes, I've heard of them.
Well,
Yes.
He's done polls, because throughout most of the years, I'm still trying to find that video too. The last few months or so, he covered the polls and showed, and Kyle too, showed like the Republicans were supposed to win like bigly. But now, it's actually possible, likely right now, that the Democrats actually not only keep the Senate, but actually increase their lead in the Senate because of shit like Roe v. Wade.
Oh, God, I hope they get it to 52 to knock out to break so that Manchin and Sinema don't have the ability to tank it.
Actually, you know what? Let's Talk Election actually covered a video on that recently. That's actually possible right now.
Oh! Hopefully!
So yeah. So the Republicans are supposed to get this massive win. Unfortunately, they probably still might win, like, the House and maybe the Senate lucky, but if they win, it's not going to be this massive win like it would have been otherwise, because the Republicans are so fundamentally extreme and evil that it turns off people. So here's Kyle's video on it. Let me rewind it.
I'll have a story on that in a little bit. He's at a new history.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Now we're going to cringe as well because he's watching David Pakman, too.
So we're in an interesting time in U.S. politics because at the same time that Biden's approval rating keeps plummeting more and more and more. In fact, I'll have a story on that in a little bit. He's at a new historic low.
Which we're going to be talking about.
Down to zero and even negative.
Which we're going to be talking about, too, very soon about Biden's chances in 2024.
Happening. A generic Democrat is now beating the Republicans in every midterm poll. So this is not sure I've ever seen anything like this. This is astonishing. So David Pakman has a segment on it here. Let's take a look and then we'll
There's been a dramatic turn of events in 2022 polling over the last couple of months. And I don't want to overstate this, but I also don't want to ignore the story, because when 3-4 months ago I was saying, guys, listen, everyone must vote and we have to do everything, fight for every seat, all of these things. But it's not looking great for Democrats in 2022. I think Democrats will lose the House. I think Democrats will lose the Senate. Some of you wrote to me and said, David, why are you writing it off? You should just say we can win it. I was like, well, I'm not writing it off. I'm just telling you what the polling is.
You gotta say the reality regardless of how you feel about it. Like, I don't want the Republicans to gain any seats, but that's likely the case, and we're going to point it out regardless.
And I'm being realistic. The polling has reversed dramatically, and Democrats are now ahead of Republicans in 3 recent polls looking at a generic 2022 ballot. A generic 2022 ballot means regardless of where you are, you plan to vote for the Democrat or for the Republican. This is not normal, okay? And again...
So Republicans were up massively very recently. They were up huge.
They were going to take something like 100 seats in the House.
But now there's been a reversal, and now Democrats are up. So he's going to give the specific numbers, and we'll talk about it more.
Now there's the risk of another unintended consequence of mentioning this, which is if I say, "Oh, Democrats are doing great now," then people will say, "Well, I don't need to vote."
Yeah, I mean, look, he's saying this is the response he gets from his audience, where they'll nitpick over, "Hey, don't do this because that'll happen. Don't do that because this will happen." But as he knows, your job is to just give the news. So you can't worry so much about the outcome. You have to give the facts, give the information, give the news, and your interpretation of it, and then you move on. And you can't, it's not going to be David Pakman's fault, whatever happens.
Also, who the fuck is that dumb enough to seriously say, Democrats are winning bigly, so I'm not going to bother voting? No, you should vote no matter what. No matter if Democrats or the Republicans win big or don't win at all. You should vote no matter what.
In the midterm. So he's swatting aside these criticisms, as he should, because they're silly criticisms. I mean, he's doing what his job is. So it's amazing that anybody would levy those criticisms. But I guess he's familiar with it because he probably reads everything that comes in, and so he feels the need to address it.
Remember good old Patriot Mail?
Yes, I remember that.
Big enough to have that much of an effect one way or
one
the other.
One of the very few good segments on David Pakman's corporate Democrat channel.
Yeah, I miss Patriot Mail. That was so funny.
Clip did get 317,000 views. Good googly moogly, David. Those are some big boy numbers right there. Blowing me out of the water, that's for damn sure.
And Pakman, you don't deserve those numbers. Kyle does, though.
3 new polls. In a new Marist poll, in a congressional ballot, Democrats 48, Republicans 41. That's
48 to 41. 7-point lead for Democrats. Now understand something. Because of the gerrymandering, in order to just break even, they're going to need to win by like 5 points. So 7 isn't really a 7-point lead. It's more like a 2-point lead.
Literally every single black person in Texas just about was stuck into one district.
Mm-hmm. Any actual lead, when factoring in the disadvantage they have, is something.
Say +7 for Democrats. That's a big, big deal. In a new Politico Morning Consult poll, Democrats 45, Republicans 42. That's
okay. 42 to 45. See, that's more like tied or even Republicans up a little bit when you factor in that Democrats need to win by like 7 to actually pick up anything at all.
+3 for Democrats. And then in a new Yahoo News YouGov poll, Democrats 45, Republicans 38.
Okay. Okay. So again, that's like a tiny, when factoring in the bias, that's a tiny lead for Democrats, but it's still a lead.
That's +7 for Democrats. Why
Really
are these
like
numbers
+2.
such a big deal? There's two reasons. Number one, this is not typically what you see when one party has taken the White House in the previous election. In 2020, Democrats took the White House from Republicans. Biden beat Trump. You all know that. And typically, almost always, with like 3 exceptions, when that happens, you would expect Republicans to do really well in the first midterms, which would be 4.5 months from now in November. So number one,
By the way, he's right about that, but it's also a little bit of a fatalistic analysis in the sense that people view it as inevitable. Like, oh, this seesaw back and forth is always going to happen. Well, it only really happens in this modern era of politics where neither party is serving the people. If you have a political party that gets elected and then delivers on promises and serves the people and materially improves their lives and does things that people like, then you would have them pick up seats.
Yeah, like we've been covering, this stuff that's been happening like a seesaw back and forth. It's only been really happened consistently since 2006. There have been plenty of times in America's history in midterms where the party in power stays the same or actually gains seats. So it has happened. Like hell, it happened like with Bush in the 2002 midterms, his first one. The Republicans gained seats that year.
In the next election. Like, the public is a lot more rational than anybody gives them credit for. Now, I don't think people are well educated and well versed on
most Americans are
historical
stupid,
knowledge
as
and
we all
facts.
know.
But I do think they're not. They aren't masochistic. Like, they want a government that works for them, and so if the government works for them, then they reward the people who did the right thing. And that's why we always go back to FDR, but he's a great example.
But they're too stupid to vote for the correct people.
This dude got elected 4 times.
Like,
they came up
like looking at the idiot Democrats that voted for Biden in 2020 instead of Bernie.
with term limits because Republicans don't.
A lot of it, we're in this situation, a lot of it because of you idiots. If you voted for Bernie, he won a nomination, he would have crushed Trump, and he would have easily picked up so many seats, especially in the Senate. That way we wouldn't have to worry about Manchin or Sinema. And then he would crush them if they opposed him.
We're never going to beat these guys. They're too good. He won 4 times. There was a time when he had like 80% of the House of Representatives and 80% of the Senate. It didn't get that way because of random chance. It got that way because he delivered for people. And so if you deliver, then you can win. All right, anyway, let's continue.
The fact that the numbers differ from that traditional historical reality is a really big deal. But the second reason that it's a really big deal is this is not the way the numbers looked just 3 months ago. And I think that we can
not
all
even like a month
sort of
ago.
take a cynical approach here and say, this is temporary. It'll go back to Republicans crushing Democrats by November. Well,
That's possible.
Unfortunately, that is possible, even with how terrible like the Roe v. Wade decision was. That was back in like late June. We got all of this July still. August, September, October, and this election year is the latest elections possible in America, November 8th. So it is possible that Americans could just simply either forget about Roe v. Wade or care more about other things instead, because usually it's as...
Like that Joe Biden's a brain dead moron.
Yep, and focus on other things instead.
It's definitely possible.
So it is possible that the Republicans could turn us around and still win bigly, but it's unfortunate.
it's not obvious to me, but one of the things we've been talking about now for about 2 months is, are there unique circumstances in this election that make it potentially okay for Democrats when Republicans should be winning? And I say that the answer is yes. This is not a guarantee of anything. I'm still getting lots of people on Twitter saying, David, you loser. Some of them say worse things than that. Republicans are going to crush Democrats in November. Just wait and see. Well, maybe. But there are some different circumstances here. First of all, normally, when we say, oh, Democrats can win by running on abortion rights. No, historically, that's not a good issue for Democrats to run on. It's not a winning issue. It's not a voting issue for Democrats. It's
True.
the type of issue that will motivate Republicans to come out to vote against a pro-choice candidate.
The evangelical base, yes.
Typically, that's the way it is.
Although
This time
there
around, it
is a
looks like
little
it could be
bit of difference, though, because now Roe v. Wade's no longer there. So now abortion rights are on the table, whereas before they largely weren't. So maybe that could flip it.
That could make a difference.
Especially since most Americans didn't want Roe v. Wade overturned, and most are pro-choice.
Exactly.
Americans are more in favor of abortion being legal in most cases than at any time over the last 50 years.
Oh, and by the way, too, because of Roe v. Wade, massive uptick in Americans being more pro-choice and massive downtick in people being pro-life. So, another crushing loss for them.
So public opinion is different now than it
Not
has been.
good. Take another L.
Only 13% of people want abortion banned in all cases, and Mike Pence is floating the idea of a national abortion ban. That is deeply
Keep
unpopular.
flaunting that, Pence, and you'll lose hysterically.
In addition to that, Republican nominated Trump nominated Supreme Court justices
Please, Pence, have a Todd Aiken moment. We want that.
have overturned Roe v. Wade, something which 2/3 of Americans are in disagreement with. That is different, and that means in this election, that situation could make it better for Democrats, particularly if they say, we're the ones trying to keep these rights, whether it's credible or not, that's what Democrats are going to do. Secondly, normally, running on gun safety regulation is a losing issue for Democrats. We've talked about it before. We've talked about it with a number of political strategists. When Democrats make gun safety regulations a big part of their campaign, it doesn't really motivate Democrats to come out and vote for them, but it does motivate Republicans to come out and vote against them. However, the rash of school and other mass shootings in the United States over the last 3 months, and just tragic numbers, hundreds of mass shootings in the United States in 2022 so far, seem to have tired out and exhausted many Americans about the Republican Party's unwillingness to consider serious gun safety regulations.
You can
I
only
would
hope.
agree with this part of his analysis too, but the problem is I think that issue has now been neutralized and taken off the table because Biden did sign the bipartisan Senate deal on guns. It was incredibly weak, but it was something, and he'd rather take
wasn't
credit for
anything.
that thing
It's
than
useless.
continue to run on the issue and ask for more when they feel like, hey, we already got whatever we're going to get.
Yeah, that is
out of
possible
this
too.
issue.
People like
So I would
we
agree
already-
with that analysis.
Yeah.
I can already see it being like, we already did reform, so shut up, libtards, deal with it.
But the Democrats themselves have neutralized it by getting that
shit in
bipartisan
our
deal through,
bag.
which admittedly was a very weak deal. But they're going to say, hey, look, we did something and it was historic.
And so you have a situation where in this particular midterm, it might actually work for Democrats to run on gun safety and on abortion rights. So that's different than normal. The other element that is different than normal in these midterms is that we are coming up against the tail end of the 6-year Trumpian cycle. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. Normally, you have a sort of relatively similar electorate throughout 3 elections. So like if you look at, 2000, 2002, and 2004 as an example. The electorate, George W. Bush won the presidency in 2000, and then you had the 2002 midterms, and Bush won re-election in 2004. There was no major change to the electorate in the year 2000, which then had to sort of sort itself out in 2002 and in 2004. It was a very similar electorate, okay? That is not the case right now. In 2016, you had all of these formerly non-political, non-voting people who were enamored with Trump, a lot of low-information voters, a lot of extremists of different kinds, people who were clueless. These people were not participating in politics before 2016. They appeared in 2016. And then in 2018, some of them voted in the midterms. And then in 2020, they were still around and trying to get Trump reelected. And now Trump's gone. And there's a real question as to, do these Trumpists vote in midterms where now Trump isn't even a candidate?
I think this part of the analysis, is lacking because he's underestimating the extent to which voting against Biden and against Democrats is a priority for the Republican base.
Yep.
Because, like, the last election, it wasn't that Biden won. It was more that Trump lost. More people voted for Biden because they wanted Trump to lose at all costs than agreed with him. Likewise, that was also the case in both Hillary and Trump in 2016. There were a lot of people that hated Trump but hated Hillary even more, so they voted for Trump to keep her from winning. A lot of people, likewise, in 2020 voted for Biden to keep Trump from winning. Most people are now voting for candidates not because they agree with him, but to keep the other person from winning, which is really destructive.
And again, this is what we saw under Obama too. It became more about not Obama, not the Democrats. These guys get really riled up and angry and frothing at the mouth when Democrats have control of anything. Now, granted, Biden's not doing Dickie McGee's act with that control, right? But to the Republican base, they're very motivated by anti-politics, by not that politics, but just
whereas Democrats are not, unless it's Trump.
very.
And then when it is Trump, they vote for the wrong Democrat, like Biden over Bernie.
Partisan,
Exactly.
I'm with the other guys type stuff. So this is why I think this part of the analysis is lacking a little.
and Trump is less visible and so many other things are going on? Or do those people that only entered the political space thanks to Trump's presence, do they just kind of go back to whatever they were doing before? I don't know what that is, but it didn't include voting. We don't know the answer to that, but it's potentially something that will really change the makeup of the 2022 midterm electorate. So do I have a definitive answer? I don't. But when we see Republicans were winning every generic ballot 3 months ago, Democrats are now winning every generic ballot, that is a major change and potentially significant. So I'm not ready to count out Democrats in 2022, but we must vote. We must get involved in campaigns, phone banking, all of it, and we'll be doing everything we can to cover these, the important races and the midterms.
Okay, so what's my take on it? Look, it's very straightforward. It all comes down to Roe versus Wade being overturned. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah.
The whole reason for the complete shift in the polls is Roe versus Wade. Is the Supreme Court overstepping, going too far, having the overwhelming majority of the American public disagree with them. The general public understanding, well, Democrats are more pro-abortion and more pro-choice than Republicans are, and so you see this shift in the generic ballot. That's all of it. That's all of it. Because, look, bottom line, this is a right-wing overreach. That's what it is. What they're doing is not popular. Their position on social issues is not popular. It is popular to bitch and moan and whine about cancel culture and people being too sensitive. That is popular. It is not popular to take the 13% position of let's ban abortion in the entire country. Let's do a national abortion ban. That's not popular. It's not popular to overturn
None of y'all's conservative policies are popular, so eat shit too.
Roe versus Wade. It's not popular to come out there and say maybe we should revisit Obergefell, which is gay marriage. It's not popular to question whether or not contraception is a right or sodomy is a right. That stuff is not popular. And so this retrograde, primitive, regressive social ideology is, it's the evangelical right-wing / Federalist Society ideology. People don't like that. And now the Supreme Court is actually exercising power and doing something that people don't agree with. So you're going to have that change in the polls. Now, here's the thing. Some people would say, well, yeah, but Democrats aren't doing anything to stop it. That's absolutely true. That's factual. And we're going ballistic at Biden over that. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know how closely people follow politics to get into the nitty-gritty of that and get into the details of that. All they know is Supreme Court says Roe versus Wade is overturned. That's like a right-wing thing. I don't like that. And that's why you see the bump in the generic polls for a generic Democrat to win now. Mm-hmm. Is because people say right-wing / Republicans, anti-choice, anti-abortion, anti-Roe versus Wade. Democrats, pro-choice, pro-abortion, pro-Roe versus Wade. So that's what accounts for that shift. Now, here's what it comes down to ultimately. For the midterms, is this issue still going to be in everybody's mind at the time? Or are high gas prices, high inflation, other economic woes, the war in Ukraine, etc., or is that going to be more in everybody's mind? What will win out in that battle? Now, look, I think generally speaking, economic issues almost always override social issues, but when you go too extreme on social issues, then yeah, maybe the social issues can override the economic issues.
Unfortunately, I think they will not, since it's going to be several months still from now. But if it was like right now, yes, I definitely think Roe v. Wade being overturned would win the Democrats bigly, but I don't know if that's going to last that long. We can only hope.
It's just a matter of how are people weighing that? How is the country weighing that on the day of the election? Is the Roe versus Wade being overturned thing still fresh enough in people's minds where they're going to vote based on that? Or is it going to be, my pocketbook or my wallet is getting hammered so hard that you got to just do a swing election where it does just go in the other direction because Democrats haven't delivered enough for people economically? And it's an open question. My gut tells me at this point, and this could change with time, but as of right now, I think we were looking at a historic walloping for the Democrats, even worse than the 2010 Tea Party wave.
I actually disagree with Colin there. All the polls I've showed show we're nowhere near as close to that. Nowhere. So I wonder what polls he's looking at. Although they did show Republicans win, but like 2010, no way. That's like huge victory they had then.
Where the Democrats got obliterated. But now, with the Roe versus Wade being overturned, you're just going to see like a standard Republican victory. It won't be historic. It won't be more than the Tea Party wave. It'll be a Republican win, but it won't be as gigantic as it would have been if Roe versus Wade.
All the polls I saw in the last 4 months showed that being like the highest ceiling, like standard. And this one probably make it more of like a toss-up, especially in the Senate now where Democrats are winning.
It didn't get overturned. So that's my instinct, that's my gut. I'm just guessing there, it's speculation. And this could change with time because other factors will play in before we get to the election, but that's my breakdown of it. If you want to...
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, Republicans still probably would win because this is just too long from now, and it's just not going to be important in people's minds probably by then, unless something else changes. So what do you think?
What did I say? I missed that.
Do you think the Dems will still hold on with this momentum till November with Roe v. Wade being...
I don't know.
Like, if this was if the election was like right now, yep, but unfortunately that's several months still from now, and Democrats are too stupid to be able to keep the momentum going on it.
Yep.
Alright, so, now on to the next topic, which is...
That would be AOC calls for SCOTUS impeachments.
Which is awesome and based! So let's watch Kyle again as AOC actually being based for once.
All right, so I just did a segment explaining what the Democrats can do and in response to Roe versus Wade being overturned, and I used history to help me for that. I looked at what FDR did in a similar situation. We looked at what Abraham Lincoln did in a comparable situation. Well, AOC's weighed in, and she has some ideas as well. She says, here's how Dems can and must do more than wait for an election. Let's start with why. 7 of the 9 justices were appointed by a party that hasn't won a popular vote more than once in 30 years.
And just so you know, since 1988, the last time Republicans had the popular vote, they've only won the popular vote in the presidential election one time since, 2004. So think about that, guys. The Republicans haven't had the popular vote in 30 plus years except for one time, and yet they still keep winning because of the stupid Supreme Court. I mean, not Supreme Court, the Electoral College. That's a reason why the Electoral College needs to be abolished. Needs to be whoever has the most votes wins.
Illegal.
The Republicans should never have had power for this long because of the stupid Electoral College.
That's an amazing fact, by the way.
Remember, Republicans always talk about the elections being rigged and all that? Oh, they are being rigged in your guys' favor when the most Americans don't want you in power. And the Electoral College has proved that. If the Electoral College was gone, you would never win again, and that's why you fervently defended all
One of those seats was stolen. The one that was supposed to go to Merrick Garland.
Oh, yeah. So remember, back in 2016 when Scalia died, Obama tried to get a third Supreme Court nominee for him in, but the Republicans, of course, blocked it for an entire year. And then, funny enough, when Trump got into power, the Democrats, even though they were the minority, they did the filibuster against the Republicans. And you know what the Republicans did? They did what the Democrats should have done, and they they actually banned the filibuster for the Supreme Court nominees so they can get it done. See, Democrats? See what happens when you actually do things? You actually get what you want. Maybe you should have banned the filibuster when it came to Supreme Court nominees, so you could have gotten it maybe, or gotten closer to it.
Yeah.
Garland. Several lied to Congress to secure their appointment.
And yes, a lot of the Republican nominees for Supreme Court lied about being that Roe v. Wade was precedent, and we saw what they did a few weeks ago. Shows how much of a fucking liar they are. And that's right. Here we go.
One justice's family, Thomas, was paid by right-wing groups for years, and he never disclosed it, violating federal law.
That's impeachable right there. Don't deny it.
Yep.
Same justice's spouse participated in January 6th, and he used his SCOTUS seat to vote to keep potential info related to his wife from investigators in Congress.
That should be probably illegal too. Plus, the fact that your spouse is related to January 6th, and not only that, she tried to pressure numerous states' legislatures to try and overturn the election so Trump would get it. More reason why Thomas should be impeached.
Exactly.
By the way, that's a huge scandal. Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginny, is up to her eyeballs in far-right conspiracy theory circles, and she participated in January 6th. And Clarence Thomas is protecting her, and by the way, not recusing himself from anything involving January 6th. And
Conflict
not recusing himself from anything that comes in front of the court that even pertains to his wife and her financial dealings and her activism. 2 justices stand very credibly accused of sexual assault, and that
Kavanaugh. I don't know who the second one is, though. If you know, do you?
Might be Kavanaugh.
What? Yeah, Kavanaugh's one, but she said 2 justices. Like, who's the other one then?
that's the tip of the iceberg.
I don't know.
Election or not, the Supreme Court has a legitimacy crisis, and the public reaffirms it. 75% of the U.S. public reports lacking confidence in the Supreme Court, and those numbers were before the Roe ruling. That's true. That's only 25% likes them. In a legitimacy crisis, the solution Biden and Dem leaders must offer can't just be voting, but of statute and authority. Compared to executive and legislative branch, checks on the court, overreach, and misconduct are little to none. Leaders must share their plans for Roe and a rogue court. Past presidents, from Lincoln to FDR, understood the dangerous stakes of allowing an unchecked court overreach its authority and threaten our democracy. Lincoln ignored the court to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. FDR, in the plunges of the Great Depression, also sought to confront the court's structure and core gerontocracy problem of lifetime appointments via a public appeal. While he did not succeed, that check came from the people in Congress, not SCOTUS. The ruling is...
You know what one thing FDR did? He threatened to pack the court, which, by the way, he is allowed to do that. There is no constitutional requirement that all the Supreme Court has to be 9 judges. You can make it smaller or bigger. It's up to Congress and the president. So if Biden wanted to pack the court, he could do that. And here's the thing, just like FDR, he doesn't even need to do it. He could just threaten it. And maybe that would change their mind. Because that's what happened with FDR. They kept overruling that all the awesome New Deal policies are unconstitutional. Once he started threatening to pack the court to get what he wants, they backed off.
Is Roe,
exactly.
But the crisis is democracy. Leaders must share specific plans for both. Now, by the way, let me respond to AOC here for 1 second. She does get one fact there wrong. What FDR did work. He threatened the court, hey, I'm gonna pack this thing, I'm gonna get my way, because they were saying the Social Security Act is unconstitutional. And he goes, my ass it is, I'm gonna pack the court and they're gonna tell me the truth, which is, it is constitutional. We have the General Welfare Clause of the Constitution. Federal government can provide for the general welfare of the American people. That's what the Social Security Act does. I'm providing for the general welfare of the American people during the Great Depression. Don't tell me it's unconstitutional. That's bullshit. You're being authoritarian and overriding the will of the people as it is expressed through me. So we threatened the court and the court backed down. It said, okay, look, lose this one, but we hang on to a little bit of our power. So it's not that what he didn't work. To confront the court structure and core did we already do this one? And core gerontocracy problem of lifetime appointments via public appeal, while he did not, yes, we already did this one. The president and Dem leaders can no longer get away with familiar tactics of committees and studies to avoid tackling our crisis head on anymore. That's a phenomenal point. What do the Democrats do? Well, we've come up with a committee. We're going to do a study on the issue to figure out what's going on. It's a way to dodge doing anything real. We have to do real things to change the nature of the country and preserve freedom and liberty. Restrain judicial review, open clinics on federal lands, court expansion, expand federal access and awareness of pill abortions, etc. For the moments when we do insist on
and I was too busy reading something.
of pill abortion.
Oh yeah, restrain judicial review. Yeah, we need that to be done.
Definitely.
Open clinics on federal lands. Which,
yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of federal lands are more like the national parks, so I don't know if you'll be able to do it over there in place like that. But yeah, open up clinics and such like that. Expand a court, yes. Threaten it, Biden. Fucking threaten it, you pussy. Expand federal access and awareness of abortion pills like Plan B, but of course, unfortunately, a lot of states restrict or ban that because they view that as abortion too. So you're going to need to do a lot more than that, unfortunately.
Abortions, etc. For the moments when we do insist on elections, we must be precise with what we need, and we will do and what we will do with that power. How many seats does the party need to codify Roe? Dems must say that, not just go vote or give us $6 to win. That is demoralizing, losing, unfocused nonsense. I will say this to AOC though. she's assuming that, like, you know, all of her colleagues are good faith actors.
No, the corporate Democrats are not. And they're actually using Roe v. Wade overturn to make money. That's how all the parties, both the Democrats and Republicans, they want to lose and be the minority power so they can fundraise off of it. That's why when they're in power, they never do anything, because they don't want to do anything.
They genuinely do want to protect Roe v. Wade. And they generally agree with me on all these various issues. It's not true, AOC. Look around. A lot of your colleagues are part of the Democratic consultant class industrial complex. All they care about is careerism. All they care about is holding on to their job.
Yep,
Everybody whispering in their ears around them. All they care about.
And this is the problem with you, because you're too nice to them and let them overrule you when you have more power than they do. You have the people on their side. And that's why you need to force them to do what you want, not kowtow to them. And that's why we have problems with you a lot of times.
Is getting paid. Yep. They don't care about winning or losing. They don't care. And there's all the evidence in the world to back that up. That's why you had some idiots tweeting, some asshole congressperson was doing yoga. He tweeted out pictures of himself doing yoga as Roe versus Wade was overturned. He's, well, you know, in a difficult time, I like to do this. Nobody cares what you like to do, bro. Nobody cares. So, at a time of crisis, he was thinking of himself. Himself. These are the kinds of people she's surrounded by. Dem leaders must tell voters the plan. What's the actual need? What specific seats are we focused on? What votes do we need and where? What states and races? And what's the return? What is Biden and Congress actually willing and able to do with 52 of 60 seats? Be honest. Details motivate. So let's wake up, everybody.
And the funny thing is, Democrats right now, if they technically have the numbers right now, guys. Biden's in power. Yep. The Democrats have the House. They do have the Senate if they forced Manchin Cinema to fall in line and then Kamala be the tiebreaker. We already have the numbers right now, but they're not doing anything because they don't want to do anything, or they're too stupid to do anything, or they don't care enough.
Buddy, what's good, Democrats? If you don't like what I've laid out here, then please present your plan instead of little why we can't lists. Let's cut the hand-wringing and get moving. Chop, chop. No more show tunes till November until it's for GoTV. Okay. Look, they just don't care that much. They just don't care that much. Now, would Democrats themselves have overturned Roe versus Wade? Of course not. But now that it's gone, are they willing to take on the fight and use the strategies that are necessary to win, to defeat authoritarianism? Of course not. Of course not. And this idea of, like, you give people a specific plan, like, you know, you
enablers of this bullshit.
Copy what Newt Gingrich did with the Contract for America on the Republican side. Hey, if you vote for us, if you get us to this number, here are the things that you're going to get. That is antithetical to the modern-day Democratic Party because they believe in nothing. They believe in nothing. And by the way, not for nothing, AOC, this is exactly what I was telling you and I was telling Bernie Sanders and other people who are nominally on the left to do with Biden. When Bernie dropped out of the presidential race and endorsed Biden, I said, well, I really hope he had a meeting behind the scenes with Joe Biden and said, look, Joe, I'll drop out and endorse you, but here are my demands. Here's a list of 20 executive orders that you're going to sign within the first week. And he could have asked for everything under the sun, the entire progressive wish list. Because you know what happens? In a negotiation, there's a give and take. And Biden will fire back and say, I can't do that and I can't do that, but maybe I could do that. And so maybe we already would have had student loan debt fully eliminated. Maybe we already would have had legalized marijuana or the nonviolent drug offenders freed. If Bernie Sanders was willing to play that tough political game with Joe Biden. And then he would have earned the endorsement, we would have got some concrete policy wins, and Bernie would have been able to turn around to the left and say, see, you idiots, you anti-electoralism idiots, I was able to get us concrete wins. So trust me, I know what I'm doing here. But that's the thing. Is that the Democrats never going to come up with a concrete plan because they don't really fucking believe in anything. And the left is never going to come up with a concrete plan and hold the corporatists accountable to it because they don't want to step on too many toes. And they don't want to be ostracized. And they don't want the media to come after them and say they're purity testing. And so we're in this horrendous, vicious
Used to be the
cycle.
ones.
Now, I like all the
purity
ideas that she
testing.
came up with here, plus I gave you some other ideas in the previous segment. She spoke on this a little bit more. Let me play this for you.
That they can now lie to duly elected members of the United States Senate in
Ah.
order to
Why can't I turn that up? That's weird. There we go.
secure Supreme Court confirmations and seats on the Supreme Court. This is what we're saying.
Do you think lying in a confirmation hearing is an
Mm-hmm.
impeachable offense?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I believe lying under oath is an impeachable offense. I believe that violating federal law in not disclosing income from political organizations, as Clarence Thomas did years ago, is also potentially an impeachable offense. I believe that that not recusing from cases that one clearly has family members involved in with very deep violations of conflict of interest are also impeachable offenses. And I believe that this is something that should be very seriously considered, including by senators like Joe Manchin and Susan Collins.
Like,
Not just consider, do it. Do it. Impeach them. Impeach them. They lied under oath. And you know what? I'll show you how they lied under oath. By the way, I wouldn't just stop there. And my brother-in-law reached out to me and floated this the other day. He's like, why not charge them with perjury? They lied under oath. So many of them said, in a very straightforward kind of way, they were like, look, Roe's precedent, and it is what it is. And so they misled everybody into believing, hey, you know, I might rule certain ways in certain cases that you might not agree with, but Roe's been the law of the land for since the 1970s. I don't know if I'm touching that. All right, so here's the video of some of the comments they made. This isn't all of them, but this is some of the comments that they made in their hearings about Roe.
Do I have this day an opinion, a personal opinion?
Double speeded that bitch.
And this video that Kyle's about to play shows the Supreme Court nominees when they were trying to get nominated years ago, saying that they would allow Roe v. Wade to stick. That's precedent. But watch how much they lie.
Change it.
On the outcome in Roe versus Wade. And my answer to you is that I do not.
But do you think there is as fundamental a concern as legitimacy of the court would be involved if Roe were to be overturned?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that the legitimacy of the court would be undermined in any case if the court made a decision based on its perception of public opinion.
So a good judge will consider it as precedent of the United States Supreme Court, worthy as treatment of precedent like any other.
Senator, I said that it's settled as a precedent of the Supreme Court entitled to respect under principles of stare decisis. And one of the important things to keep in mind about Roe v. Wade is that it has been reaffirmed many times over the past 45 years.
As Richard Fallon from Harvard said, Roe is not a super precedent because calls for its overruling have never ceased, but that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled. It just means that it doesn't fall on the small handful of cases like Marbury versus Madison and Brown versus the board that no one questions anymore.
And every one of these Supreme Court fuckers voted against Roe v. Wade even though they said it was precedent and they wouldn't touch it. So, impeachable right there.
So you could argue the most honest one there.
And they're going to do that for
still had that line about it should be overturned.
same-sex
But she
marriage.
was
You're
saying,
going to do it
she was asked if it was a
for
super precedent, which means basically
contraception.
one
You're
that we're
going to
not
do that for
position,
sodomy
and it's,
laws.
set in
So the
stone.
people
She
who,
was like, not
so
really.
that
But it is
states can
precedent.
ban
So
sex
she's
that
probably
is
the
not
more honest of the two,
missionary
or
sex.
all of them. But you know,
It goes between
there
1
are,
and
this
6
again, this isn't
minutes.
all the commentary. There are things that
Between two
Gorsuch said,
consenting
there are
married
things that
heterosexual
Kavanaugh
adults
said
for the purposes
in
of
their
procreation
hearings,
only.
where they pretty much lied under oath. They lied under oath. Now, is it direct enough? I don't know. But impeachment is something that you could do regardless because it was misleading. Perjury is a little different. You would need to, it would need to be really proven that they did that. But look, any of these ideas that I floated in this segment and the previous segment, any of them are better than nothing. And unfortunately, as I'm sure all you guys know, we're probably going to go ahead and get nothing. Unacceptable, can't stand, and the Democrats are a real special kind of stupid. because they're trying to fundraise off of this while admitting we're not going to do Dickie McGee's acts. Okay, then don't fundraise off of it. They're shameless. They're shameless. It's the consultant industrial complex in the Democratic Party. All these ghouls care about is holding on to power and getting paid. They are professional losers. They are the Washington Generals, and it's never been more obvious.
I
If you
love
want to see me in
losing.
crystal ball.
Yep. So yeah, what do you guys say about this? Fuck those SCOTUS fuckers and people.
Yeah,
every single
and we
one
know
of
that
them.
they're going to try and overturn same-sex marriage. They're going to try and ban contraception. They're going to try and reinstate sodomy laws so that states can create laws that mean that define sodomy as anything that isn't intercourse, missionary, between 1 and 6 minutes, between two consenting married, opposite-sex adults, for the purposes of procreation only. Potentially they may go after interracial marriage, and one they will try to go for is the Voting Rights Act, so that states can ban black people from being able to vote.
Alright, so, what's our next topic?
That would be Boris Johnson resigning.
Alright, so I actually have the Wikipedia article on this because this is a whole bunch of things. So for all of you who don't know, Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister of the UK, and yesterday he announced he's resigning after being the Prime Minister for the last 3 years. Now, the reason why he's resigning is so huge. Like, it's not like just one thing, it's a whole lot of things. And also, here's the Wikipedia article if you want to read it. This thing's been going for like the last few months, even though this thing says July 5th. He was involved, something about Partygate. I don't know exactly what that was about, but he actually faced a no confidence vote.
Oh, that's when him and a whole bunch of his political staff and fellow politicians had basically partied throughout the entirety of one of the lockdowns. I mean, yeah, the entirety of the first lockdown, of the second lockdown.
So you're saying he pulled a Gavin Newsom?
Yep.
Not surprised. But yeah, that happened, and he faced a no confidence vote, which is, I'm pretty sure is as close as possible accuracy, like equivalent to an impeachment in the British government. But he survived that, and that was a while ago. But now recently, from what I heard, supposedly, as I'm trying to look it up again, it was something about he tried to get someone who's in his party in a position of power, but the fucker that he tried to put in power was accused of sexual assault and such, which of course is not a good look, of course. And keep looking up for this crap. Let's see if you want to maybe look it up too. But yeah, yesterday he is resigning, and he is gonna resign. It was, let's see right here.
Eventually.
Yeah, he's not leaving yet. He'll leave once they have a new leader in the fall elections later on this year. So he's going to be Prime Minister for another few months or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, have you seen anything about this? Because there was the Partygate scandal that happened last year.
Holy 63 cabinet ministers resigning.
Yeah, it's happened a lot recently.
Because of Boris Johnson being evil.
Yep, collapsed the government, 63 resigned and all that. But I'm trying to figure out what was the exact reason why he's resigning. Have you found anything yet? Or is it just the sexual assault
There's a bunch of reasons.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There would be there's several of them was the sexual harassment stuff. A lot of the others were removing
Partygate.
Yeah, a few or other like that, yes. And a lot of others started leaving on because Johnson wasn't resigning, and so that's what most of the rest of them left.
So yeah, we don't know the exact reason since we don't really follow British politics much, but honestly though, good riddance. Boris Johnson's a piece of shit, and oh my dear God, like the last several decades, the British Prime Ministers have been fucking conservative retards. They're like having a Japan situation too, which we're going to be getting to later because I got a lot to talk about that one too. But yeah, good riddance honestly for Boris Johnson. Now, would be nice if you replaced him with an actual progressive UK. Just saying. Use that big brain for once. I know you're too Americified to actually be smart like the rest of you Europeans, but could you at least use your brain for once? You're supposed to be better than us. Like, all of you Western European countries are supposed to be better than America. Use that brain for once and stop being too Americified to actually vote for progressives. Like, Jesus, like, come on. Like, how do you have all these scandals with all your conservative prime ministers, and yet you still keep voting for these same people? Just like Japan, which we'll be getting to later. So, yeah, honestly, just good riddance. Just hope actually get replaced with an actual progressive. But like we said, we don't follow the British stuff too much since we're not in the UK, so we don't know the exact reason why he's resigned. But all I can say is, good riddance. So that short thing out of the way. So now, what do you want to talk about now?
Now we go on to Americans don't want Trump or Biden.
Yeah. So of course
they don't want the perjuring tin pot brain dead narcissistic psycho, and they don't want the brain dead loser Biden.
So anyways, there have been several polls recently over the last few months showing that the vast majority of Americans don't want Trump or Biden to run in 2024 because they both sucked. Basically, it's a Hillary and Trump situation in 2016 where nobody liked them. And you're going to see these stunning polls as we watch David Dole.
Are you the best messenger to carry this forward?
Trump DeSantis ticket in 2024?
Well, I get along with him.
A lot of people, I think, have just assumed that another Trump versus Biden matchup for 2024 is inevitable. But
hopefully
a new
not,
poll
but
out
unfortunately I
throws
think it still
a bit of
is.
a wrench into that idea, while also introducing another question that I have a little issue with, the way it's framed, but it does raise a very interesting discussion, and that'll get to what I think is the winning message for 2024. But before I get there, to set this up properly, I want to show you a couple of clips. This is President Joe Biden and Donald Trump being a little sensitive to the idea that they may not be the right leaders for their respective parties.
Are you the best messenger to carry this forward when Democrats, many of them, many progressives, want you to do more?
Yeah, I am. I'm the President of the United States of America.
Oh,
That
such
makes
a
me the
good
best
rebuttal,
messenger.
senile
I'm the
old
only
man.
president they got.
Could you envision a world, sir, where there is a Trump DeSantis ticket in 2024?
Well, I get along with him. I was very responsible for his success because I endorsed him and he went up like a rocket ship.
DeSantis is actually more dangerous than Trump.
Supposedly was not going to win and she won.
He's actually a
All right, so I'm
competent
going to get to this
fascist,
poll
not
shortly,
like
and
Trump
I'll get
is an
to
incompetent
the
fascist.
other question in this poll that brings up more questions about 2024 and what actually a winning message could be. But here you have these two leaders, both being a little sensitive to the idea that they may not be the right leader for the party moving forward.
Oh,
Biden
no.
there trying to simply get around the question, saying, I'm the only president they have. And then you have Donald Trump here, who never actually answers the question about DeSantis while trying to take
Trump
full
weasels
credit
his way
for
out
his
of a
route.
question? I am
And he has
Pikachu
been
face.
very sensitive online on his platform, Truth Social, over recent polling showing DeSantis ahead of him. This is where we get to the results in this most recent poll. So this is from Harvard Capps Harris, and this is going to show, I'm going to start with Biden, then I'll get to Trump. It's going to show that if this trend continues, and I'll have supporting data to support this, that's the whole point of supporting data, I'll show you that if this continues, these two very likely, maybe not very likely, but at this point, could potentially not be the leaders of their party moving forward. And I actually think it's almost certainly the case with one of them. And I'll tell you who I think that is in a bit here. But first, here is the Biden data. So from Harvard Capps Harris, this is shared exclusively with The Hill. They found that 71% of respondents polled do not think Biden should run for a second term, compared to 29% who say he should
because he's
run.
brain dead.
Among the contingent of
brain dead
respondents who
idiot.
believe the president should not run, 45% said Biden should not make another bid because he's a bad president, while about 1/3 of respondents said he is too old, and about 1/4 said because it is time for a change. So, 71...
as we all warned you back in 2020, why you should have picked Bernie instead of Biden. Because he was not the electable candidate. That was a debunked lie. Bernie was. All the polls showed Bernie was doing better against Trump than Biden. So eat shit. Now you can deal with it that you made the situation as we tried to warn you.
1% is a lot of people. And I'm going to get to some supporting data here showing you this isn't simply an outlier. And when it comes to the reasoning here, I mean, we've heard a lot of this before. You can sort of almost maybe categorize in your mind who each of these answers are from. Like when it comes to bad president, most of those are likely conservative voters, though I know for a fact a lot of people on the left would agree. And people that are just objectively seeing what is going on and Biden's inaction would agree that he is a bad president.
Dude, he literally is polling worse than Trump ever did as president, believe it or not. That's pretty sad.
Too old. This, for me, is... The age isn't an issue. It's how you operate. So, yeah, you could say maybe he's too old in the sense that he doesn't seem as there as someone like Bernie Sanders is, even though Bernie Sanders is a bit...
Biden's brain dead, Bernie's based. That's the difference.
Older than Biden is. If you saw Bernie in his recent debate with Lindsey Graham on Fox News... My God. I mean, it's like the man hasn't aged in...
Yeah, Bernie is... Actually, Bernie is older than both Trump and Biden. He's in his 80s, actually, right now. But guess what? Still smarter and still sharper than both of them combined. By times a million.
20 years. His mind is still there.
Biden Bernie Sanders turned
not the same guy he was
80 last year.
Even 5 years ago in some cases. So, but that said, we've heard
Brain Dead Joe will be...
So Obama's
80 in November.
That, knows how to win elections. He is saying that Biden's age is a liability, and this is no progressive here. So when you even have people like David Axelrod, part of the Democratic establishment,
it should be
pointing
policies
to
only.
Biden as a nominee being a potential issue, then you have to, as a voter,
and also if any of you people seriously think Biden's too old to run, then that also applies to Trump too. He's the oldest president ever elected too. And God, do you see all the health problems he has too? Like, dude, come on.
Seriously consider maybe it's time to try and rally around somebody to primary Joe Biden. And this gets to the other data points as well here. So from 538, this is a piece from early in June. Americans are unusually lukewarm about a second Biden term. So understand how rare this is in terms of a first-term Democratic president. We're in the first, 2 years here, and already voters, including a majority, as I'll get to, a majority of Democratic voters want somebody else. This is an issue. So they go on to right here. A Wall Street Journal poll conducted from March 2nd to 7th found that more than half, 52% of registered voters don't think he'll run again, while only 29% think he will, 19% were unsure. A second Biden run isn't that popular either. According to an AP NORC poll conducted from Jan 13th to 18th, 70% of Americans don't want the president to run in 2024. Even Democrats are lukewarm about the idea. A CNN SSRS poll conducted from January 10th to February 6th found that slightly more than half, 51% of registered Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents wanted a candidate other than Biden. So to already have this, and if you go on to read this piece, they say this is essentially unprecedented, to have this low level of support from even their own party's voters in the first 2 years. This is a big deal. This is a reason to worry, and this is a reason to prep now for a robust primary challenge so that by the time, the general election rolls around, that the party and the media are already prepped to have somebody in place of Joe Biden. Now, also worth noting here from this poll, I'm going to show you the differences. So this Harvard, the same poll, found that the president has an overall approval rating of 38%. Compare that to March 2nd, 2021, exact same pollster. Biden had a 61% approval rating. So 38 now was 61. This is back when they were in the process of passing the American Rescue Plan. Democrats were also in the process of the second Trump impeachment. So you had Democrats at that point, in the first month of Biden's presidency, actually, you could argue, somewhat fighting for something fighting Republicans, fighting to actually pass something, and then since then it's been completely downhill. Biden unwilling to even fight his own party, people like Manchin, Sinema, when it comes to passing his own agenda. What do you expect voters to do? They see an incredibly weak president, not even willing to fight Republicans with your own power when it comes to what they've just done in terms of overturning Roe v. Wade. And I've covered, again, what Biden could be doing with his own power, executive power on that. So what do you expect voters to think? They want someone different because they are not seeing someone that is even willing to fight Republicans. Now we get to...
And that's why you should not have voted for him in 2020.
Exactly. That's why you should have voted for Bernie.
Bernie would have crushed
Bernie, and he would have absolutely demolished Donald Trump.
Do we have to remind you how base Bernie is when he's angry?
Mr. Donald Trump, which of course does not fare much better. So a majority of respondents, 61%, also say former President Trump should not run for the White House in 2024. 39% of respondents said the former president should run again. Among the respondents polled who believe Trump should not make another bid, 36% said Trump was erratic, 33% said he would divide the country, and 30% said he was responsible for Jan 6. When a mob
he is 100% all of these free things, actually.
Pro-Trump ransacked the Capitol, and yes, we all know what happened. So I wonder if there was a response for all the above, because he applies to all of them. But in terms of Trump, this is the guy, out of these two, Biden or Trump, I don't think Trump's going to be the nominee in 2024. Biden, for me,
still think right now
still
Trump
a toss-up. I think based on the way the party, the Democratic Party...
Actually, Dole might be a little bit more optimistic than me. I think both of them are going to run, and I think both of them are going to win right now. Like, they don't... Like, here's the thing. Biden and Trump, they don't care. They don't care that they're hated. They care more about themselves and power. That's it. Yep. They're not going to care unless they either die, force them by like legal means like impeachment or something like that, or you just force them to not run. That's it.
Operates the way the media
or vote them out
around them normally operates. That it's going to be hard to challenge Biden unless Democrats are actually willing to challenge sitting power within their own party.
They never do because the corporate Democrats support it all.
And unlike Republicans, Democrats have no standards and will just accept anything. Whereas Republicans, they do primary their fellow Republicans if they think they're too rhino.
Ever willing to actually do that, but when it comes to Republicans, they have no problem just moving on. So. Uprooting what people assumed was going to happen. So, we saw that with 2016. It was going to be Jeb Bush in 2016. Was not Jeb Bush. And now people think it's going to be Trump again. Is it? Is it when they can just get Trumpism with Ron DeSantis without all the overt baggage there? So we're seeing now more and more polling showing DeSantis beating Trump. And within those polls, a more recent poll, I think it was this poll, show that people that, among viewers that watch Fox News or other conservative media, that gap is even larger in favor of DeSantis, showing where the trend is moving. So based on, maybe these committee hearings or the hearings around Jan 6 is the commission's hurting Trump. Maybe that's the reason. I think part of it as well, though, is just Trump is not on social media. I mean, he's on Truth Social, but he's kicked off Twitter. He's not really in the minds of people every day the way he was when he was president, because he was on TV every day saying some ridiculous garbage. You have DeSantis now in the media constantly. Conservative voters, and to be fair, a lot of people, of course, moved by media, what the general media is telling them. And so they're seeing DeSantis a lot more. They're seeing what his recent speeches are. There's, he's, of course, in the public more because he's actually a sitting lawmaker. I think this is helping him, and Trump, in the process, is being hurt. And ultimately, I don't think Trump's going to be the nominee for the GOP in 2024. I think DeSantis is going to be, and I think that should be a scary thought for Democrats. Trump is an easier person to defeat. DeSantis tougher, as he's more of an unknown quantity.
Yeah, he doesn't have the baggage like Trump, and even worse, he actually
That
has...
is true as well.
Yeah, but
DeSantis
does not have the baggage of Trump being he's not a former president. He didn't do January 6th. He doesn't have the baggage like Trump, and to make matters worse, he actually has more of a brain than Trump, so he actually could implement...
Yeah, like I said, Ron DeSantis is more dangerous because he's not a fucking brain-dead idiot like Donald Trump.
Yeah, and that's why, if anything, you want Trump to win, so maybe you can fuck over DeSantis.
Meaning it's a lot more voters are going to be open to a DeSantis presidency. So
yeah, because a lot of normies, they're disgusted by Trump. They're not disgusted by DeSantis, even though they are the same policies. He just doesn't rub people the wrong way, and he doesn't have the same baggage like Trump did.
Democrats have to actually be willing to fight with an individual that excites voters out to vote. Typical non-voters, that 40% that don't normally vote. Democrats win when they come out. How do you get them out? Don't have Joe Biden. You got to bring somebody else in that actually brings excitement, brings out young voters especially.
Bernie?
Joe Biden, with his complete failure, especially when it comes to issues affecting young people, is not going to do that. Now,
he gives zero
this
shits.
is where we get to this other aspect of this poll that I find interesting, but also slightly wrong in terms of how the question was asked, but let me just get to it first. A majority of those polled said they would consider a moderate independent candidate should Biden and Trump square off against each other in 2024, including majorities of both Republicans and Democrats polled. 60% said they would consider a moderate independent candidate for president if Biden and Trump ended up running against each other in the next cycle, compared to 40% who said they would not consider it. All right, and just quickly here, broken down by party, 53% of Republicans polled and 64% of Democrats said they would consider a moderate independent candidate. So more Democratic voters open to the idea of an independent candidate than the GOP, but still, both of them are majorities here. Now, this is the issue with the question. Moderate? What is a moderate independent candidate? Like this, I'm going to try not to spend 10 minutes on this alone, but quickly here. This is the issue with the way the mainstream press, with the way corporate media frames this topic. That, oh, moderate must be in the middle. You have the extreme Joe Biden and the extreme Donald Trump. Moderate somewhere in the middle.
Biden is not.
So,
who is seriously dumb enough to think Biden is far left extremist? Oh my God, that is
Republicans who are off the right side of the political spectrum.
Exactly, but anyone else, come on. Hell, even Bernie is a moderate by international standards. So, hey, if you want a moderate, go for Bernie. Easy W.
I'm fine with the term moderate if we actually all agree what moderate means. Moderate would be where the majority of the country is. That would be a moderate position. Oh, the majority thinks this? Well, here's a candidate that supports the majority. They're a moderate. I'll show you right now what moderate actually means. Most Americans support raising the minimum wage. This is a moderate position. 70% of Americans support Medicare for all. This is a moderate position. Majority of Americans favor wealth tax on the very rich. Another moderate position. 2/3 of Americans think government should do more on climate. Another moderate position. 57% of voters say U.S. political system works only for insiders with money and power. Another moderate position, which goes into this next policy position, with a poll showing Americans favor an overhaul of campaign financing. These are all moderate positions, and they are all to the left of both Trump and Joe Biden.
Exactly.
If Democrats want a winning message and a winning candidate for 2024 to be able to defeat Ron DeSantis, they need someone who has these positions and has a history of fighting for them. Somebody who can be trusted. And somebody who honestly is a good politician.
Exactly. Bernie Sanders.
You need that in a package. Biden clearly is not that. Biden was simply the guy to get rid of Trump. people
Bernie
wanted
could have done that and
Democratic
one more,
voters,
make
and
us
those
in a
who
better
didn't vote,
situation.
but were done
so
with Trump.
eat shit,
They wanted somebody
retard.
who was a little familiar.
Yeah.
That's what Biden was, a familiar, safe choice to get out Donald Trump. He accomplished that
Even though he
goal.
wasn't safe, he almost
It's
lost
time
the
for
election,
him to
remember?
move
He
on.
only won by like
Yep, I
40,000
remember
votes.
that.
Right now, going to the midterms, need to be thinking about the next few years. Who are they going to put up against Biden? They simply cannot sit back and allow this election to be won by Ron DeSantis and the GOP.
But they
have
want
to
that,
take this
though, because they want to
conversation
lose.
seriously, look at the results,
They
look
want
at the
to
data,
lose. They
look at
want.
what is actually
They're
popular,
okay with the
and
U.S.
understand
becoming a
they need an
fascist
actual
dictatorship
fighter
where they'll be
for
genocided.
2024.
Yeah, so what do you guys say about this? Most Americans don't want either Trump or Biden to run, but of course, I think not only
Going to run because they're both power-hungry bastards, and both of them are also brain-dead morons.
but of course, Americans are also brain dead for still voting for these fuckers in, even though they don't want them. You know, there's
Yep.
other options.
Well,
you
they're
know.
they're brainwashed fools. 80% of the American population are no hope brainwashed idiots
Like
that
the
deserve to be slaughtered.
Like Republicans, the Republicans do want Trump, but Americans, if you don't want Trump, then maybe you should try to get him not allow him to win the Republican nomination. And likewise, Democrats, if you don't want Biden to run, maybe you should finally concede to us progressives and let us get the candidate we
Joe
want and vote for
Biden,
now.
that corporate Democrats are unelectable.
Yeah, they always were. Debunked fucking lie. Destroyed that in 2016 and then 2020 as well. Fucking idiots. So yeah, they're disliked. They don't want to be. No one wants them to run, but of course, now they're going to get the
To run
nomination.
because they're power-hungry, brain-dead psychos.
Yep, they're going to get the nomination and they'll run again, which is absolutely pathetic and dangerous.
Yeah.
All right.
Especially since both of them are only being held together by the dark side of the Force. So.
All right. So now on to the next topic.
Jordan Peterson is retarded.
Finally we go up against the Kermit Frog himself. Now, of course, I just found out earlier today, because I actually watched part of it, he actually was on Crystal and Kyle and Friends earlier.
Yes, I saw.
Kyle was talking, and oh boy, Peterson was not happy when Kyle pushed him back even a little bit. He was salty as fuck. Now this video is actually not about that, because this we just found today. Maybe we can cover it in the future. But this one was most recently about, he actually got banned from Twitter. Did you hear about that?
Yes, I heard this.
Because he made an absolute fool of himself. And of course, Kyle, I don't know if it was Kyle or someone else, they actually have a theory that he did this on purpose to get banned because he has a book that's about to come out and get promoted everywhere. So he wants to get banned from Twitter to get the
That would not surprise me.
You get I'm censored because I'm speaking facts and promote his book more. And of course, in this one, he was on Brave Dubin and he actually defended, and then worse, he defended gay conversion therapy. Oh my god.
Because of course he did.
Oh my god, come on, seriously?
All right, guys, so Jordan Peterson
Gay
and Dave Rubin did a
torture
podcast,
and murder
Dave
therapy.
Rubin, he opens up about the fact that he's having kids.
Oh man, I don't know what's sad. Having to watch a video with Brave Dubin
at this point,
or,
so they thought it was like
or
a degenerate thing
Peterson.
for him to have
Oh
kids
my
with
god,
his
a
husband,
shit
etc.
sandwich.
They are going to talk.
No idea. I don't know. I don't know what is worse.
And,
it's a giant
exchange
sandwich in between.
And surgery. Right. And more than that, and here's another perverse element of this. So many legislatures around the world now have banned so-called conversion therapy. And to me, this has been a catastrophe. Now, I know that
it's a catastrophe to ban gay conversion
therapy?
therapy?
Therapy has been a catastrophe.
Yeah, that's because he wants
Banning
to. That's
conversion
because he
therapy
gets
has been a
off to
catastrophe.
torturing and murdering
Now,
gay
this is a guy
people.
who just indicated when talking about Elliot Page that he thinks there should be no trans-affirming surgery. He seems to indicate
Yeah,
that
he was supposed to legalizing murdering trans people.
And he kept
deconversion therapy should be allowed.
And he kept misgendering and dead naming Elliot Page too, which was really cringe.
Intentional dead naming.
Even Rubin is going to push back a little bit. Watch this.
And things like that. Yeah.
Mostly of fundamentalist Christian therapist types in the U.S. who were offering their services to homosexual people who were unhappy with their sexual orientation, and so You could have a discussion.
The only reason they would be upset is because of people like you that can't accept them for who they are. There's nothing to change. They're just being who they are.
About whether that's ever appropriate or not. Although I would say that's bloody well between the person and their therapist, as far as I'm concerned. But now that's illegal, and it's.
Oh, now it's between a person and their therapist. Now it is. When it's something that objectively, empirically doesn't work at all, and it's a total fraud and a scam. Oh, you're free to choose on that front. What about trans youth making a decision between the parents, the kid, and their doctors? Is that something that's hey, you're free to choose? Or is that like the state should get involved and ban that?
Exactly.
And that's something which, by the way, is more effective than deconversion therapy. We're just asking questions here, Jordan.
Illegal to the point where you are required by the conditions of your psychological association, your professional associations, American Psychological Association, let's say, to affirm the stated identity of your client, which is completely insane.
And also very different. Affirming the stated identity of the client is very different than affirming that someone happens to be attracted to the same sex, right? Those are very different.
So in other words, gayness is okay, but trans stuff, that's a little kooky, isn't it?
Oh, so you're terse. Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
Oh, that means they're best friends with JQ Rowling.
You're not, as a therapist, your role isn't to affirm or to deny. It's to listen, right, and to explore. That's your purpose.
In all your years,
I think that's fair. That's a fair point.
Of clinical therapy and all the patients that you ever saw, I'm sure you saw dozens, if not hundreds, of gay patients. Did you ever meet a gay man who successfully de-gayed and then went on to live a completely functioning life?
No.
Exactly, because it doesn't work.
So it is a scam. It is a scam. It is evangelical fundamentalist Christianity.
How do you not realize the self? They should do it. Oh my god, it was great.
Come on, dude. Come on. First and last time you guys are ever going to hear me say this. Credit to Dave Rubin for that very simple pushback, which sort of
that's really cringe to say that. Dave Rubin actually being good for once. Oh god.
That is so weird.
Went the heterosexual route.
Yeah.
Questioning who went the heterosexual route. I got news for you, Jordan. If indeed he did go the quote-unquote heterosexual route, he was bisexual. He was bisexual. That's what that means. I chose to go the heterosexual route. No, if you went that way and you genuinely did, then you're bisexual. Or the person's gay and they're lying and they're pretending they went the heterosexual route, but really they dream of dick all day long.
He was questioning...
Which is, by the way, what gay conversion therapy historically would do.
Some duress, because he was the target of somewhat unwanted amorous affections by a fairly persistent gay gentleman who... And this person was, I would say, easily swayed and confused. But that was the closest I'd ever seen to the situation that you're describing. Now, this conversion therapy issue is so... Now you, as a therapist, you're ethically and legally bound not to question the identity of the stated identity of your client, which to me is preposterous because all you ever do as a therapist is question identity. That's the whole.
Of course, you think that.
That's the whole enterprise, and you don't do it affirming or denying. You really don't. You do it as a questioner and a strategist. But then we have the other conversion therapy, which is surgical conversion, and that's not only legal, but opposing it has become a crime, and so that's a form of insanity that I can just barely wrap my head around.
So what do we do going back to the conservatives that were worried that this is where we were going to end up? In some sense, I should probably be their greatest hero because it's like, here's someone who wanted to enter civilized society, wanted to affirm most of the long-fought, time-tested ideals, wanted to enter the world with those things, help defend that world. It happens to be a little different than we would think, right? Yeah. Okay, it's two guys. I can't deny it. I should sort of be a hero to them. It's not the ideal one that they went for, but it's approximately close enough that this should be pretty good. I suppose that will be my challenge in life.
Well,
okay, this is incredible. So in other words, Dave Rubin is saying, look, I'm one of the good ones, right? I know that conservatives are generally against homosexuality and gay marriage, and they certainly were until very recently. But now, for the people who are pushing back on me with my marriage and my kids who are on the way, hey, I should be your hero because I'm affirming everything else about the lifestyle you think is correct. All the other traditions, the fact that marriage is a good thing and it builds a society and individualism is important. Hey, I affirm all those other things. The only area we disagree is that I'm gay, but so, like, look, I'm one of the good ones. And gay people like me, it's okay for us to get married. But, and also in the context of this, he's sort of throwing trans people under the bus. Like, they're kooky, they've gone too far, but me, I'm good, right? Right? It's so sad. It's sad, man. It's sad. Jordan Peterson thinks deconversion therapy is all peachy, all fine and dandy, when it objectively does not work.
Yep.
It just does, it's not even... Like, that's the thing.
I wish I could find the video Kyle covered back like in 2014 or so, but he did a really good video in depth about how bad gay conversion therapy is, because I want to play it on here if I can find, because the shit that he covered is nightmare fuel bad. Like, the shit that they would do is really, really horrible, and that's why it needs to be banned.
To transition from one gender to another, with some percentage of people, I don't know the specifics, but with some percentage of people, that absolutely works. And I know because people have reached out to me who are trans listening to the show who tell me exactly that.
Vosh
So that
covered
works.
the polls.
I don't know
It was
the
like
numbers,
only like
but that
1%
works
or
with
so that
some
actually
percentage of people.
detransition.
Gay conversion therapy has never worked ever. But he's cool with gay conversion therapy, but he, at the very least, heavily questions the notion of gender-affirming surgery. So, there you have it. Not much else to say. If you want to see me...
boy, maybe we should cover next time up. There it is on the video. Explosive Jordan Peterson trans rights Elliot Page controversy, which is probably one of the videos that Kyle covered recently, because I saw 2 of them earlier. Yep. Maybe we should cover that maybe next time out and laugh at Peterson. So yeah. What do you guys say about Kermit Frog being supporting gay conversion therapy?
Not surprising, honestly.
I'm about to commit suicide after hearing that cringy take. That's for sure. Oh, God, it was so bad.
I mean, remember, Jordan Peterson is the guy who had to go to other countries to get detox. I think it was Serbia first to detox, where he got COVID and almost died. And then he had to sneak into Russia, where he had something else happen and almost die.
Oh, yeah. Here's a way to wrap it up. Hey, Peterson. Clean your room. All right. So that was going to be the last part of this episode, but something new came up overnight for me. So what is that?
Yep. Shinzo Abe was assassinated at a campaign rally.
So yeah, for all of you who don't know, Shinzo Abe was the 2-time Prime Minister of Japan from like a year period of 06-07, and then from 2012 to 2020. He is the longest serving Prime Minister of Japan post-war, like 10 years almost. And just what happened overnight, as he covered, he was assassinated at a rally. And he is finally gone. So, oh man, I got a lot of things to say about that. Of course, on the one thing, I condemn what happened to him. It's, you can't murder people regardless. Well, we don't know the exact reason. Yep. We don't know the exact reason yet, so we can't say it was politically motivated or not. So we're going to have to hold our tongue on that. But regardless of the reason, that's unacceptable. You can't kill people. But, with that being said, though, I am sick and tired, since I woke up this morning, people, like, idolizing Abe like he's this saint that he undeservedly died.
No, he's not.
No.
He's the fucking Erdogan of Japan.
Yeah.
Like how Erdogan wants to establish a neo-Ottoman empire, Shinzo Abe wanted to establish a new Japanese empire.
Yeah. So, guys, as a weeb like me, I know probably the most of Japan you'll probably find any American that hasn't been there. I researched the shit out of Japan all my life, to the point where I know most of their political parties and stuff like that. Shinzo Abe is a disgusting piece of shit. Like, he is really bad. He is like Japan's equivalent to Trump, if you don't know it. Yep. And anything policy-wise, he might even be worse than Trump. So, let me describe you how bad he is. One, he is the grandson of a war criminal that was involved in Japanese war crimes in World War II. By
the way, the Japanese Empire were worse than the Nazis, and in fact have often been compared to ISIS in their brutality.
Yeah, and also I just found this up while we were watching Jordan Peterson. I found a picture of him, this is really cringy, of him in a Japanese fighter plane with the number 731 next to his name. And for all of you who don't know, 731 is the initials of a Japanese not biolab, but basically their version of the Holocaust, where they would do medical experiments on Chinese, Koreans, and other horrible things, and they died because of it. And the American government, of course, let Japan get away with it because anything to stop the Soviet Union and the Cold War coming up. So yeah, and people were saying, oh, it's just a coincidence that 7 free one's on there. Bullshit!
No,
Look
it's
at
not. He
Pass.
fucking deliberately selected that. He's in love with those numbers.
Yeah, so yeah.
That number.
He is definitely condoning the fact that Japan did horrible war crimes in World War II. And also, let's get into the rest of it. First off, his economic policies, Abenomics, since I can't pronounce it off the top of my head, were terrible. They have not fixed anything of Japan's economic problems since the 90s. They've been terrible economically since the 90s. The population has finally started to decline when he was prime minister, which was one of the things he tried to change, which actually sucks for them because their policies, their NATO's policies, are actually really good by world standards, but not working because people just don't want to have kids, and Japan's economy is so bad that they can't afford to have kids.
Their population's actually been declining for the last 20 years.
5 years, actually, since 2015. But yeah, do I need to remind you he's part of the Liberal Democratic Party, which, may I remind you all, don't let that name fool you. They are not liberal. They are right-wing as fuck, and he himself is a far-right nationalist that completely and utterly denies Japan did anything wrong in World War II.
Exactly.
The far-right in Japan literally...
2008 was when Japan's population peaked, and it's been slowly declining ever since.
But yeah, he and the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan fervently deny that Japan did literally anything wrong in World War II, to the point where they have textbooks whitewashing the rape of Nanking, all the hundreds and thousands and millions of Chinese, Koreans, Southeast Asians that they killed, denial of comfort women, which they kidnapped women throughout Asia and all them to force them into prostitution for soldiers. They literally denied all of that. Do I need to remind you all that during his reign of prime minister, he and other idiot men in his party could not stop, every single week, saying something extremely misogynistic that would cause a national backlash. Yet they keep stupidly voting for these people because Japan is so hive mind that they literally vote for the Liberal Democratic Party since 1947 almost every single election, even though they're pieces of shit. And also, policy-wise, probably the worst thing he did was that he here's another thing too. He regularly, I can't remember what it's called, but he would regularly go to a shrine which has Class A war criminals of Japan in there. So he's going to a shrine that regularly promotes war criminals in Japan's military during World War II, which pisses off Japan and both Koreas and Taiwan because they fervently deny that they did anything wrong. And now, probably the worst policy he probably did too was that he tried, and he actually succeeded somewhat, to weaken the Article 9 of their Constitution, which a lot of you don't know.
I remember that, to make it so that, he, as I said, only his ill health was stopped him from making any further progress in turning Japan back into the Japanese Empire.
So for all of you who don't know, after World War II ended, when America, the Allies, occupied Japan, we rewrote their constitution and we put a thing in there called Article 9, which forbade Japan from ever going to war ever again unless they were attacked. So now, since 2015, he changed it so where now Japan could join a war, like if America fought China, North Korea, and all that, even if Japan wasn't attacked. And guess what? 2/3 of the country were actually against it at that time. I remember that, because I remember ripping him a new asshole on Twitter years ago when he did that. So yeah, he's trying, basically what the Liberal Democratic Party and Abe tried to do is, they're trying to turn Japan back into the Japanese Empire, and if the far right got their way, invade both Koreas, China, Taiwan, Philippines, Southeast Asia, all that. They want to bring back GIA.
They would have done it all again.
The Great East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere.
They would have started World War III in their own way.
Yeah. These guys are monsters and evil. So, honestly, I don't care if people hate hearing this. I don't feel any sympathy whatsoever that he's dead.
I don't support the assassination, but in a way, he kind of had it coming.
Well, we don't know exactly what led to his assassination either.
True, but potentially he could have had it coming.
But yeah, he is a piece of shit, and I don't feel any sympathy whatsoever if he's dead. Fuck him. And hopefully Japan start voting for... Oh, that's right. There are other parties, because maybe we can go down the parties really quickly. There's a Liberal Democratic Party, like I said, they're right-wing pieces of shit. They used to be the Democratic Party, which was like the standard, like Democrats like in America, but they merged with another party. They're like the only other major party, but they literally never win ever because they're Liberal Democratic. The Liberal Democratic Party always fucking wins all the time. There's the Greens, which are based. There's the Communist Party, which is the most powerfulest communist party in the world, and they're not even communists. They're social democrats like Bernie, so even more based. There's, oh god, the Comedito, which are far-right Nazis. And then another party I found earlier today are a bunch of Nazis as well. Like...
Sounds like a couple of them are like even to the right of Abe, which is saying something.
Yeah, they are. Like, don't feel sympathy, and don't let, like, the sweet rhetoric go, oh, he was a saint, how he was assassinated. No. He was a piece of shit, and we need...
He was a piece of shit who potentially had it coming.
Yeah, people like him need to not be in power in Japan ever again. And anyone that's in Japan watching this, for the love of fucking God, stop voting for the Liberal Democratic Party. Vote for the progressives. And not only that, let them stay in power for like 70 years like you've done the Liberal Democratic Party, and maybe then you'll finally turn around. You've literally had them in your power for like 30, like I said, 70 years, and look how Japan's economy's been since 1991. Stagnant.
Yep.
You remember the lost years?
Remember that 2008 and on, their populations actually declined.
Yeah, you guys are just stagnant. So, stop voting for conservatives. Their policies don't work, and they're trying to turn you back into the Japanese Empire, which, by the way, 2/3 of you are pacifists. 2/3 of you are against Japanese Empire coming back. Then don't vote for these people. It's not that hard.
Exactly.
Vote for progressives. It's very easy. Do it. So yeah, fuck Abe. Good riddance as far as I'm concerned. Piece of shit. Alright, so now we finally covered all the topics. So see you guys next time for episode 54, and oh boy, I cannot wait to laugh at Jordan Peterson some more if we watch his video with Kyle. Oh, that will be really funny.
This is gonna be awesome.
Alright, so see you guys next time.